happening, tabletop gamers? My name is LeunameGames. Welcome back to LeunameGames. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to play the 2 to 5 player worker placement game Agricola by Uwe Rosenberg and published by LeunameGames. A game all about running a medieval farm in, I believe, it's 11th century Europe. I'm not quite sure about that part, but regardless, when it takes place, let's see what's in the box. In order to set up the game, there's a few things you're going to need to do. First things first, you're going to need to give each player one of these player boards. Each of these player boards has a bunch of squares on it that you're going to be using to build your farm around, whether it's farms, extending your house, or building pastures for animals. There are 3 different house tiles included with the game. There are these brown wooden tiles, there's these orange clay tiles, and then there's these gray stone tiles you can see down there. At the start of the game, you're going to start with 2 wooden tiles on these 2 carpenter marks. Then you're going to give each player their player pieces. Each player gets 4 of these little houses, which are stables in the case of this game. There's a bunch of these little wooden stakes here, which are fences, and then there are 5 round discs that each player has, which represent your workers. But at the beginning of the game, you're going to start with 2 of these. Then you're going to need to set up the game board. The game comes with 3 separate boards included with the game, and what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to set them up right next to each other, these 2 vertically and this one horizontal. I'll explain what this 4th board is a little bit later. You'll notice that in each of these 3 boards there are these patches of landscape. This is where you're going to be putting the cards to represent the worker placement areas. For example, these 2 cards are going to be placed in these 2 areas. Now in this area over here in board 1, these are only used if you're playing in a certain group of players. These cards here represent those number of players. If you were playing with 5, 4, or 3 players, you would take those cards and you would lay them out in these 6 patches over here. Now this is not going to apply for this tutorial because I am setting this up for a 2-player game. In the remaining 2 boards, there are these stage cards. These stage cards represent the different stages in the game. To set these up, what you're going to need to do is look at each of the stages of the cards. For example, these 4 say stage 1, and then look in the areas where it says stage 1, which are these 4 areas here. So what you're going to do is shuffle all the cards for that stage, and you're going to set them up in that stage area. You will repeat this step for stages 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Moving on to the 4th board included with the game, these are for major improvements. There's a small deck in the game called Major Improvements. These are basically upgraded versions of the minor improvements that you can get, except these are open to everyone. So basically all you gotta do is set up the major improvements. It's basically you take the card, look at their name, find where that name is on the board, and just place it there. Next you're going to give each player some minor improvement cards and occupation cards. These are what those cards looks like, the minor improvements on the left, and occupation cards on the right. And essentially what these cards are ways that you can basically give yourself special abilities throughout the course of the game. You're going to be given 7 of each of these. Now what's important is that there are 3 different decks of minor improvements and occupations. There's essentially a base set, which is what is used for a standard game. There's what's called an interactive deck, which has this little eye on it, as well as every single card included with that. And basically what these are ways is that the improvements and the occupations can interact with the players a lot more. And lastly, there's a complex deck. And the complex deck is like the same thing. They have a K on the side of each one, and it's basically a more complex version of the normal cards. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to be using the base deck. One other thing to keep in mind when handing out the occupation cards is how many players are in the game. Each occupation card has a number in the left corner representing a number and a plus. This represents that card can only be used if you're playing with that many players or more. So since I'm playing with a 2-player game, I'm only going to be using the cards that says 1+. You'll then shuffle the minor improvement and occupation decks, and give 7 of each to each player. One good tip that I found when playing this game is that before you start the game, you want to decide for yourself which cards you want to play early in the game, which cards you want to play late in the game, and which ones you think you're not going to play at all. Because having 14 cards in the game, there is no way you're going to be playing them all. Then you need to set up the worker placement spots. In order to do that, you basically look at the board, and if there's anything that has an arrow on it, like this fishing spot right here, then you will place whatever resource that it says on that spot. For example, this has a food, this is a reed, a clay, and 3 wood. Then you determine who is the start player. The first player will then get this little token here, along with 2 food to start. All the other players will get 3. Then you simply then take the top card in the stage. You will then flip it over, and then you are ready to begin. On your turn, you're going to take one of your workers and place it in a spot. And the spot is going to allow you to take an action. There are lots of different actions that you can take in the game. I will briefly explain each one. This one here will allow you to extend your house and or building stables to put on your farm. To do this, you're going to need to spend the resources that you've acquired that matches the materials that your house is built out of. For example, everyone starts out with a wooden house, so you can only build wooden houses onto the house already. You cannot start with these wooden houses, go here, and then decide to build a clay room. If you don't want to build another room to your house, or you're not able to, you do have a second option with this spot. You can spend 2 wood to build a stable. And what a stable does is it allows you to place it on one of your pasture spaces, and now that space can hold double the amount of animals that you've enclosed there. Unless there is no fenced in area, then that means that that space can hold 2 animals. Going to the second spot will allow you to take the first player marker away from someone and add to your own, so that you'll be going first next round, because usually when a round ends, the first player marker does not go away unless somebody goes to the starting player space. It also allows you to play a minor improvement card that you have from your hand. If you have acquired the conditions necessary to build that card, for example this one here, if I had down the line had 3 wood and a stone, I would have been able to build this windmill, place it in front of me, and I would have gotten 2 points and whatever ability that states on the windmill. The third space will allow you to take a grain from the general supply and put it into your own. Allowing a field will allow you to take one of these field tokens, which is basically the backside of a stone house, and place it under one of your spaces. Now you have your own field where you can plant your own crops. Going to the occupation spot will allow you to play an occupation from your hand. In order to play an occupation, you just simply take one of the cards that you have, place it in front of you, and now you have that ability. It's important to know that when you go to an occupation spot, the first occupation that you lay down is completely free. If you want to play a second one down, then you have to pay a food to do it. Going to day laborer just gets you 2 food. This spot here is major or minor improvement. And basically what this means is that it allows you to play a minor improvement from your hand, assuming you've got the resources that you need, or it allows you to choose one of the major improvements in the game and pay the resources that it costs and take it for yourself. Now you're probably wondering what the difference between a minor improvement and a major improvement are. Well, that is the fact that the minor improvements that you have in your hand are yours. Nobody else can try and steal these from you. Whereas for the major improvements, it is fair game to everyone. Anybody can build this. Going here gets you 3 wood, here gets you a clay, here is a reed, and here is a fish. Unlike many of the other resources in the game, these resources stack up in their places. So if a round ends and nobody has gone to one of these places, then when you replenish the area, the places then stack up. So if nobody went to this fishing spot, it would still get a food anyway. So now it would have 2 food. Same here, if nobody went to get a reed, it would have 2 reed. If nobody went to get a clay, it would have 2 clay. And if nobody went to get this wood, there would be 6 wood on it for the next round. An easy way to tell if resource spaces stack up or not is if you see that it has a red arrow pointing to the resource on it. Another thing that's important to keep in mind is that when you place a person down to claim a resource or use an action spot, nobody else can go to this spot for the rest of the round. Once all the players have placed all their workers, the round is over and you reset for the next round. To do this, each player will take back all the workers that they have placed in the round and set them back in their pool. Next, you're going to reveal the next round card. This will unlock a new space for you to place your workers. Then you're going to replenish all the resources that have the red arrow. As I said before, regardless of whether they have been claimed or not, you will add a new resource to their spaces. For example, if this was claimed, there's a fish. Nobody claimed this reed. It still has an arrow on it, so another reed shows up. Both the clay and the wood were claimed, so they would still be at their base values. Once everything has been reset, you then play the next round. You will continue to play like this until 14 rounds have gone by. At that point, you then total up your scores, and whoever has the most points is the winner. Well, that seems pretty simple, right? Well, not quite. There's some other things that you're going to need to know before playing the game. Here are all the other cards revealed. I'll explain what each action does right now. This is a sow space. This will allow you to plant a grain or a vegetable that you have in your supply. To do this, you're going to need to place one of your grains on a field along with 2 other grains stacked on it. That essentially represents that you have planted your crop and it grew. Now, if you were to plant a vegetable on it, you would only place 1 other on it. So if you were to place a vegetable instead of a grain, it would simply look like this. 1 for the initial placing, and then 1 for the growth. Remember, the sow action also allowed you to bake bread as well. In order to bake bread, you're going to have a piece of equipment in your house that has this little bread symbol in the bottom right corner. And that will allow you to convert your crops that you have in your supply into bread, depending on what it allows you to do. For example, this stone oven will allow you to convert 2 grain into 4 food each whenever you used a baked bread action. This sheep spot, when you go here, gets you all the sheep that's in that area. Now, when you get an animal, you have to place it on your farm immediately. Now, you can only place animals in spaces where you have either a fully closed fence. In this case, for example, let's say I have 1 set of fences marking this square here. That is a pasture that's fully created. Each pasture can hold up to 2 animals. Unless, as I stated earlier, you have a stable, then it can hold double the amount. So in this case, this pasture here can hold 4 animals. However, if you were to develop a much bigger pasture, let's say I had built one that's this big, then I can hold up to 4 animals in this pasture here. However, with a stable, I could hold 8 animals. If you have to place animals in your farm, but you do not have the space for them, then you lose those animals that you would have gotten. However, you are allowed to keep 1 animal inside your house as if it was a pet. Speaking of fences, this spot here will allow you to build the fences that you need to build the pastures for your farm. In order to build a fence, you simply just spend 1 wood per fence. And as I stated earlier, you can try to basically create pastures on your land to fit your animals in. This spot here is a stone space, which actually shows up twice in the game. Going here gets you all the stone that is on that space. This space here is after family growth. This will allow you to extend your family, essentially getting more workers that you can use in the game. However, in order to do this, you have to have more spaces available in your house than the amount of workers you have available. For example, I only have 2 rooms in my house, so the maximum amount of workers I have can be 2. However, if throughout the course of the game I get a 3rd room in my house, then I can go and use after family growth and get a third worker that I can be placed on my house and then used in later rounds. After you use the family growth action, you also have an opportunity to play a minor improvement from your hand. This space here is after renovation. This will allow you to upgrade your house into different material houses to get points. For example, let's say I use this space and I wanted to convert my wood house down here into a clay house. In order to do it, I would have to spend 1 reed plus a clay for every room in my house. So in this case, 3. I would then take all these wooden tiles, flip them over, and now I have converted my house into a clay house. An important thing to know in regards to renovating your house is that you can only renovate the house completely. You cannot upgrade a room just one at a time. After you renovate your house, you have the option, if you want, to play a major or minor improvement, provided that you have the resources. This spot here are for boars. You place there, you get all the boars in that area. Here gets you a vegetable, and you take a vegetable and you put it in your supply. This is another stone, which I've already explained. This is a cattle. When you place there, you get all the cattle that's in that spot, and you put it on your farm. This one over here, family growth, will allow you to extend your family even if you don't have enough spaces in your house. So for example, if I were to go in that spot, I would be able to increase the size of my family from 3 to 4, even though I don't have 4 rooms in my house. Plow and sow will allow me to plow a field onto my farm, which means I would get to take one of these plowed fields, place it on my farm, and if I had a grain or a vegetable in my supply, I would be able to take that and plant it in that field. The final spot here is after renovation. Now this is a different after renovation than before. Before, it allowed you to upgrade your house and add a major or minor improvement. This one will allow you to upgrade your house and then add fences to your farm with 1 wood per fence, as if you were doing 2 different actions at one time. The last thing that I need to talk about is the harvest phase. At the end of rounds 4, 7, 9, 11, 13, and 14, there is what's called the harvest phase. This marks the end of the individual stages. When the harvest phase comes, a few things happen on the farm. First, any crops that are on a field will be harvested. The way this works is that you basically remove the top crop from each field and you add it to your supply. Essentially, that crop has been harvested. Now, if there were multiple crops on the field, let's say when a harvest phase came, and this is what I had, 2 vegetables on 1 field, I would just simply take the top one and put it in my general supply. The second thing you do is you feed your people. In order to feed your people, each family member is going to consume 2 food that you have from your general supply. However, if you had managed to create another one within the round, let's say this was the round that I created this third worker, you would only need 1 food for that round, but in future harvest, you would need 2. If you cannot feed your family, for whatever reason, for every food that you're missing, you would be taking one of these beggar cards. And a beggar card is a very bad thing for you, because this is straight up losing points. Every single begging card that you get is worth -3 points. So you don't want these. The last thing that happens in the harvest phase is the breeding phase. Now this is where you have a chance to get more animals onto your farm. To determine which animals breed or not, you'll look at all the animals that are enclosed in their pens. If you have at least 2 animals in a pasture and there's room for more, then you would get another animal of that type in that pasture. For example, I had these 2 sheep and I had room for another one, so I would get another sheep. This cow, however, cannot breed because obviously animals can't breed by themselves, so I would just be stuck with the 1 cow. If, however, you were to get an animal but you didn't have room for it, let's say, for example, this is what I had, and he couldn't move the cow out, then the animal that you would have gotten from the breeding is lost. Now, like I said, players will keep playing until the 14th round has been fully done, including the final harvest phase at the end. Then the game is over. Then you calculate your final scores. To determine what scores you have, each player has one of these little score reference sheets. And basically what you do is that you follow what each of the criteria is on the bottom, and you're going to get a certain amount of points depending on how much of each thing that you have. Whoever has the most points is the winner. And that is all you need to know in order to play Agricola. As always, if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I will get to them. Thank you all as always so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. I really appreciate that. If you like what I do and you want to support me in the future, then please feel free to hit subscribe. Thank you all as always so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. But until next time, see you later! One big negative that I have with the game, and it's because of the components. And I'll go ahead and just state that negative right now. The cards themselves. The cards are literally this big. You can barely even see them on the camera. I'll put up a picture so you can see them better. They're tiny. They're a miniature size. I can easily break these things.